Welcome back to another episode of the podcast. Today we're going to be speaking about protein. So let's get straight into it. So protein in the world of health and fitness depends on where you are in your experience level of who you spoke to and what you've Googled off the internet. You could be actually super highly prioritizing protein more than you need to, or you could be equivocally unaware of the benefits or actually scared by some level of protein. So I want to kind of give you a understanding of what it actually is and what I would recommend if we're looking at protein. So some people are like, what is protein? Like what is chicken? Like, let's look at the sources first and then look at what happens in the body when you have the protein. It's not just a muscle building thing. It's not just like for bodybuilders to eat. Protein sources per se, chicken, the poultries, the eggs, the dairy. You can find it in veggies in small dosages. Buckwheats and quinoas have small amounts in your lentils. Your now very much your protein breads, and then your veggie and vegan sauces, your Linda McCartney sausages, your corn-based stuff, your soy-based stuff, and all your other like meat replacements that will have some level of protein in. But majority today, back in the day, it literally was tofu, soya, chicken, beef, fish and eggs and dairy. That was about it back in the day. So it's evolved over time in terms of what this protein is. So what you would call a protein source. But what is protein? So fact checking to make it as simple, as easy as possible to digest. So what protein is, so for example, a chicken breast is made up of like 95% protein, 5% other things. Whereas vegetables or like broccoli, for example, might be like 90% fiber and carbohydrates, because that's what it's from, and then 10% protein. So everything has a different ratio. It's not just a pure protein source. There's only one pure protein source, which is filtered down dairy, which is called whey protein, which is a protein shake per se. That's the only thing that is optimally pure protein. Everything else has combinations of percentages of things called protein, carbohydrates, and fats and fiber, and then in between those, depending on the percentages, you will determine whether it is a protein, whether it is a carbohydrate, or it is a fat. Nothing is completely 100% protein outside of the filtered whey. There's very little things that are just completely sugar or carbohydrate. That would be things like Haribo, which is just basically sugar and gelatin, and things like Lucozade, pure sugar, basically spoonfuls of sugar in water. That would be pure sugar, pure carbohydrates. And things that are pure fat, there's not that many things that are pure fat percentages. Obviously you've got things like lard, butter, ghee. Those things are super high percentages of fat, which would be classified as a fat. If something has a high percentage of protein in, the things why we would want to favor those is because protein gets broken down and has something inside of it called amino-acids. So if you're a gym goer, you've probably seen branch chain amino acids as supplementation, but we'll get to that at a different point. But basically, in your body takes something in, it digests it, converts it to something else, and then it's utilized around the body. The protein just doesn't go through chicken into your mouth. It gets chewed down a bit and then pushed into your bloodstream. It gets converted into things that can be converted through the bloodstream, through the blood-brain barrier, through the digestive system. So therefore, things like chicken, eggs, dairy get converted from their natural state at that point, which is chicken, beef and eggs, and it gets broken down in the digestive system to these molecular things called amino acids. These amino acids, there's 20 of them. Each different protein source will have different variance levels of these numbers. So for example, like the one for muscle building, the essential amino acid for muscle building that is kind of really important is called leucine. You will find a high degree of leucine in poultry, milk-based products and dairy-based products, and you will see almost none in poultry-based products outside of soy. You won't find leucine in lentils. You won't find leucine in vegetables. You won't find leucine in jackfruit, for example, which means that it doesn't have the same benefit as the others do for that one particular thing. And when you're breaking it down and you're looking at the function of these things, each amino acid, there's 20 of them, but there are 9 that are essential. They do different things in the body and they have different roles. When we're looking at protein in general, most people will forget that it's not just a muscle building thing or for bodybuilders. Actually, here's the list of things that it helps with. So let's have a look. Because I Googled it and I was like, what is the easiest way to do it? Because I understand the science, but distilling that is different. So it grows and repairs muscle tissue, makes hormones and brain chemicals, provides an energy source, maintains healthy skin, hair and nails, boosts your immune system, and sustains a normal digestive system. So If we're looking at that protein, that's what it does when those amino acids go into the digestive system and they go through the body. They help with your hair, skin and nails, energy source, brain chemicals, digestive system, help you build muscle tissue, boost your immune system. There's some really big benefits, right? Even if you're not looking at building muscle tissue, you'd probably want your hair and skin and nails to be half decent. So that's what those amino acids do when you're broken down. And that's what they help with. That's why we eat them on a consistent basis. Now, the other parts, things around protein sources, and the reason why we choose to have them more often than other sources like carbohydrates and fats, is because they have a massive benefit to your digestive system and your hunger level. So when you eat more protein-rich foods, they keep you fuller for longer, which then makes you less needing snacks or higher calorie dense foods later in the day because you've had a good quality protein source and food within that daytime. So you're basically eating something with fullness now so that you don't have shit later. In essence, that's what protein helps with. Outside of that is that you would rather hedge your bets with protein than not have it at all. The research is really, really clear from a dieting perspective, from a life extension perspective, from a muscle tissue / quality of life long-term perspective. It helps. Just think of it this way. I've just done obviously 2 podcasts talking about the progression of things that you need to do in the future. If you're not eating protein to sustain your muscle tissue, maybe you don't want to get bigger. But how about this? When you're 50 years old, do you want to get weaker and frailer? No. Okay, so how do you stop being weak and frail? You eat your protein, which then helps you sustain your muscle tissue and build your muscle tissue so that you're not weak and frail. Eat your fucking protein. Yes. Even if you're not looking at it from a bodybuilding perspective, you're looking at it from a lifestyle perspective. And if you're a lady and you want your hair, skin and nails to look absolutely fabulous, you want luscious locks like me, or you want really, really nice skin like myself, because I put some baby oil on it this morning and I'm getting into moisturizing, which I haven't done for a long time, then you will want to eat your damn protein. And it's majority of reasons why when we look at the South Asian community and break that whole barrier down is there's lots of hair, skin and nails issues, there's lots of chemical issues, there's poor digestive systems, no muscle tissue, and frail elderly people. All comes down to the protein content and exercise as well. So I'm not going to break it down too much from a South Asian perspective. We all know that I've probably had more protein from the ages of 11 to 16 than most people would have in a traditional South Asian household from the ages of 0 to 25. So protein is not one of those in terms of percentages that is prioritized as a thing. And I get it from a socio-cultural perspective back in the day when it was beans and rice, and it was very much a cost thing, an expense thing in terms of being able to afford those type of things, and they obviously made meals without it, and that totally makes sense. It's the same with the Mexican cuisine and the South American cultures. Is like they have cheap cuts of meat and then they obviously make a lot of beans and rice because that's what they could afford, and that's what that culture carried through. So it's the same effective terminology there. So when we're looking at what the benefits are outside of that, I think obviously you can hear that the hunger is easier so that you eat less shit later in the day. You get better muscle tissue for short-term and long-term. You get better brain chemicals. You get better hair, skin and nails. You get better immune system, and you get a better digestive system. So all really big benefits. But then the question is, Nath, but how much of this stuff do I have to eat? I don't enjoy eating it. This is where the biggest question, in my opinion, comes in when I refer back to the beginning when I said you're either on this side of the thing where you have no clue what protein is and why it's important, and then you got on this side of the coin where you're like, it's been overly emphasized, I need to get 157 grams tomorrow every single day for the rest of my life. It's not particularly true. So I think I'm in the mid-ground when it comes to this protein side of the stuff. It's important to get enough, but not overvalue it to a point where you're like getting protein yogurts at every point, or you're getting everything with protein in, or you're hyper focusing on protein yogurts, protein pancakes, protein bars, protein snack, protein shake, protein dinner, protein this, protein that. It's like, if you have enough throughout the day and you have it in your normal meals, breakfast, lunch and dinner, and maybe in a snack, you don't need to opt for the extra protein shit throughout the weeks and weekends, and you can actually enjoy a dairy milk bar instead of having a protein bar. Like, you can actually do that. And I think most people just need 3 adequate servings on a protein on a day-to-day basis to maintain all of the benefits outside of muscle building. That's the only one where it does take into consideration that you will need to supply it with more to be able to get more. But if you're 45 years old and you don't have any vision of putting 5 kilos of muscle tissue on, and you want to just recover well, you want your hair, skin and nails, you want to just have a normal life where you're not going to get frailer over time, then having put protein in each of your meals and an adequate portion of that, and having maybe a snack with some yogurt in which has protein in, you will not go bad at all. That would be perfect for the long term. The only times when you have to consider protein itself is when you're looking at muscle building. So observation of the last 12 years is that, you know, the guys who've lived at home for a long time, when they've trained, they haven't got many good results, and then they're like, what did you eat for dinner? And they're like, lentils and rice. And it's like, okay, cool, well, you can have that, but if you want to build muscle tissue, there's certain things you have to do. As I mentioned before, that amino acid, or the essential amino acid, which is what protein gets broken down into, the one that creates this thing called muscle protein synthesis, which effectively it puts it in the muscle, it helps it recover, and it helps synthesize new muscle tissue. So basically it's like what the sun is for flowers. Photosynthesis, it goes in, it takes glucose from the sun into the plant, makes it grow bigger. That's what muscle protein synthesis is for muscles. Hopefully that's a good analogy. The way that that's triggered is by utilizing this thing called L-leucine. Now, you can't find it in lentils, you can't find it in veggies, you can't find it in coconut yogurt, you can't find it in anything other than like your tofu, your soy, your meats, which then are all your protein powders. So therefore, it becomes more selective of the food sources you have to eat to be able to get that level of muscle growth and be optimal about it. Now, this is where most people go wrong, is that they've been with a coach or they've seen a meal plan that is specializing in trying to be optimal with their muscle growth and not considering that this is a 40-year-old female that doesn't care about muscle tissue. But you'll have seen the 4, 5, 6 meals a day, protein in each meal, 2 shakes a day, only tofu, eggs, chicken, veggie, beef, salmons, the fishes, the dairies, all those, only those food sources. And then most people are wondering why they can't stick to a diet. And I think there's a massive fine balance between looking for optimal protein and sticking to a diet, especially as a South Asian, where you're used to the veggie curries, the okra curries, the fucking veggie curries, the tofu stuff, the paneer, all that type of stuff, dal and rice. And there has to be a balance between the two. So if you're watching this video and you're like, right, I want to get as fucking massive as possible, bro, like, Nathan, help me out, dude, I'm going to say have the protein sources that are with leucine in. So your tofu, soyas, whey proteins, your meat, if you can have that, your fishes, your beefs, if you can have that, and your eggs, if you can have that, and utilize sources 4 to 6 times a day. 4 to 6 times a day, you're having those sources, so you're having an adequate amount, and maybe you need specific guidance, but you can hit me up in the DMs for that. So 4 to 6 times a day, and then go and train really, really hard, and you'll be absolutely fine. No stress about that. But if you want in the balance between the two, where you're like, I don't want to miss out on my mum's cooking, I don't want to have to hypersensitively focus on protein and making sure it's at every single meal to the same degree, and have to weigh out the food, and have to be thinking about protein pancakes, not proper pancakes on pancake day, or have to be thinking about a protein Easter pudding on Easter. Fucking just eat Thornton's. Like, give it a break. Once you've had your 3 meals with your protein and you want to find a good balance, have your Thornton's, have your Ferrero Rocher on Easter. Don't have protein Easter chocolates. Like, what? Why? You don't need to have it, nor will you have the leucine in anyway. You'll have enough from the normal meals that you have. So if you want to find a good balance, I think utilizing all the variety of protein sources, irrespective of that one thing, leucine, not being in the veggie sources primarily, it's not that important for someone that wants to just maintain their weight, maintain their muscle mass, and get stronger over time, and not like hypersensitive on the muscle building side of things. So I think having the lots of variety will allow you to stay within your diet, stay within the lifestyle, not feel restricted, because that's what most people do, feel restricted when they're having just protein sources, and they don't really enjoy these protein sources, but they have to have them because their coach told them they had to. Just have varied amounts, your dals, your veggie curries, your dairies, your eggs, and obviously if you're having the chickens, or you're one of these guys who eats veggie at home because mum works veggie, but then you go to Nando's on the weekend, get your chicken in on the weekends, lads. Go on, son. And if you're laughing at that, I've had that 100 times. You secret chicken eaters. You veggies with the secret chicken eating fantasies at weekends. Very, very, I know who you are. Name and shame you to your mums. I think once you look at protein a little bit differently, which is, it's super beneficial for lots of things. It's beneficial for your skin, hair, nails, energy sources, digestive system, protein, all that type of shit, immune system. But you're having a more of a structured approach you'll see why it's of benefit with obviously reducing your hunger levels down. It makes you fuller for longer, which means that you stick on a diet for longer. And if you can make it a concurrent part of your lifestyle on a frequent basis 3 to 4 times a day, then you will have that constant flow of those amino acids that are going to go to those areas to help those specific functions. And that's going to lead to a much better outcome of your health and fitness journey. The problem with some parts of dieting too is that obviously you're reducing your energy and you're obviously reducing the calories that you're eating. And sometimes if you're not even eating adequate protein and you're obviously dieting for a long period of time, it may take your muscle tissue away if you're not eating adequate protein. So you will want to make sure that the dieting is, when you're dieting, you want it to come from fat, not from muscle tissue or skeletal stuff. So eating adequate protein is really important. Now, why is it that we have to eat it like 3 to 4 times a day and we can't just eat it in one go? All the protein that you eat gets absorbed for sure, but the amount that can be synthesized into that muscle protein synthesis I spoke about before, which helps the muscle tissue grow, that can only be done in like 30 to 40 grams in one dose to be utilized. After that 30-40 grams, say if you had 70 grams, that would just go to waste and just go to extra calories, and it would not increase the benefit of the muscle protein synthesis. It goes up, and at 30-40 grams, it goes back down. So more does not equal better in each of those meals. That's why you want to spread them across the day. And then equally having spacings of this allows you to have 30-40 grams every single 3 to 4, 5 hours, whatever it is, and that will then spike that number, and then you get the total benefits across the whole of the day. Because if you have it in one go, you get benefits of 40 grams of it, but if you're doing 100 grams, you've wasted 60 grams of the protein to not get the benefits of the amino acids. So hopefully you understand why you need to have that on a more frequent basis. Plus that helps with dieting, because then you get to actually be less hungry 3 or 4 times a day because you're having the protein-based foods. So it can be really, really, really useful throughout that process. I don't think there is any other, maybe some like usual junk questions that most people have, which is like, if I eat too much of it, will I get bulky? But as I just said now, if you eat too much of it, it just goes to waste because you can only synthesize a certain amount, so you can't eat too much. But if will I get bulky if I eat loads of protein? It's like, as I spoke about, like getting bulky takes a long time. We're talking about, like, I've been trying for years and I'm still fucking 75 kilos. It's not going to happen overnight, and nor would it happen without training either. So you have to consistently train for years to gain muscle tissue. Just by having some protein isn't going to do that. I think one of the biggest underrated elements of this whole protein side of things is like when you realize that your brain works on chemicals, and the protein intake, which amino acids are the things that the brain utilizes to create those chemicals, you will realize that if you have a low protein diet, you're not cognitively the best version of yourself, and you're not cognitively working at the speed that you can do, or dealing with stress the way that you should do, or dealing with situations, or handling things, or responding to certain things. They all are at a lower level because you haven't got the adequate levels that you need of those chemicals to be produced. If you want a functioning brain, don't sleep on protein. It's not just about muscle tissue. Again, probably one of the theories I've said about today with the 2 other podcasts that I've done, it's like, don't think about the visual stuff. Think about the benefits out of your life, health-wise, psychologically, that you can get from doing that one specific thing. So if you eat protein 4 times a day, you have an adequate amount of protein, your brain's going to get enough chemicals to actually, for you to be cognitively functional. You're not going to have any issues, stress-related issues. You're going to be productive. You're going to be good in that sense. You're going to be not deficient. Then you're also going to have a great digestive system. You're also going to have great hair, skin, and nails. You're also going to have great immune system. Like, why would you not want to have those things just by having a chicken breast for lunch, or having a protein shake after the gym, or having some yogurt with some fruit? Like, that's the biggest bang for your buck. Get great hair, skin, and nails. No need for a nail routine or moisturizing routine from L'Oreal. You could just eat your protein and have a shower like most lads do, and you'll be absolutely fine. Now I'm only messing, but hopefully this was useful on protein. Any other questions, hit me up in the DMs.